You are listening to The Evidence Locker. Today's episode is brought to you by the Books Company. Books flowers are sustainably grown and cut fresh from the world's finest eco-friendly farms. Our cases have been researched using open source and archive materials. It deals with true crimes and real people. Each episode is produced with the utmost respect to the victims, their families, and loved ones. Warning: this episode contains direct quotes with explicit language. If you find profanity offensive, please be advised that the words have not been censored. It was a balmy April night in Pinellas Park, Florida. A storm was brewing. A storm that had nothing to do with the weather. For months, two 18-year-old girls, Rachel Wade and Sarah Ludemann, were terrorizing each other, stalking each other, making snide remarks, and leaving threatening text and voice messages. The reason for their relentless feud? Joshua Camacho. He was a player, and seeing both girls simultaneously fueled the fires of their hatred towards each other. He was smooth and manipulative, but instead of leaving or confronting him about the issue, Rachel and Sarah chose to fight with each other. Neither one let an opportunity go to make the other look bad. The year was 2009, and all teenagers lived their online lives on MySpace.com. Photos and mood updates were broadcasted to the world, exposing one's innermost thoughts. This was the perfect platform for Rachel and Sarah to claim Josh and to brag about their conquests of him. Their friends followed the feud, and it became a form of entertainment. As soon as there were any updates or news, their friends told them and encouraged them to act. It was a teen soap opera with many characters. Tensions rose until the early morning hours of April 15, 2009, when they finally came face to face. With many of their friends watching, a physical altercation followed. And then there was blood. A lot of blood. By the end of the night, one of the two girls was pronounced dead. Rachel and Sarah grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Pinellas Park in happy family homes with both parents. They were loved and cared for. Both attended Pinellas Park High School, but not at the same time, so they did not know each other personally. Rachel Wade came from a loving home. Her mom Janet was an elementary school teacher and her dad Barry a truck driver. She had an older brother and they had a stable home life. That is, until Rachel hit her teens. She became rebellious and got herself into trouble quite a bit. Her parents said that it soon became obvious that Rachel preferred chasing boys to chasing good grades. She always broke her curfew. Once, she was caught in the backseat of a parked car, having sex with a 19-year-old. She was only 15 at the time, and the boy was charged with a felony sex offense. In her sophomore year, Rachel ran away from home a total of 14 times. Her parents always notified police, and when she returned, they tried their best to persuade her to stay. Rachel also had an angry streak and lost her temper easily. One night, after a verbal fight with her mother, she grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer, ran down the hall and locked herself in the bathroom. Janet Wade was concerned that she might harm herself, but fortunately, she didn't. After the incident, Rachel ran away from home yet again. Her parents were deeply concerned about Rachel's behavior and took her to counseling. And that worked for a while. But ultimately, Rachel's desire to be independent and free from her family responsibilities was too strong. It was like she couldn't wait to go off on her own. But not to live responsibly, but rather to work and party. And of course, boys. She loved flirting, and because of her looks and fiery personality, it was always reciprocated. After Rachel dropped out of school, she moved out of her family home and into her own apartment. She was able to support herself, thanks to her waitressing job. Rachel was proud of herself and the fact that she could take care of herself. On her MySpace page, her name was Independent Chick. After she moved out of her parents' home, their relationship was even better. She was on good terms with her mom, her dad, and her brother, and went home every weekend for family dinner. Sarah Ludemann was the only child of Charlie and Gay Ludemann. They moved to Florida from New York because they wanted to be somewhere safe and warm. The couple struggled to conceive and only had Sarah later in life. They doted on her, their entire lives revolving around the sweet, bright girl. As a teenager, Sarah was close to her parents. Family friends joked and called her a daddy's girl. Her mom, Gay, worked as a surgical nurse, and her dad, Charlie, as a taxi driver. Sarah shared his love of country music. They rode along in his cab, blaring Keith Urban on the radio, singing along at the tops of their voices. Sarah loved singing and dancing, and even joined her dad when he took up karate lessons. As she grew up, Sarah wanted to go out more often, socializing with friends. It was difficult to let her go, so her parents enforced a strict 11 p.m. curfew. Sarah didn't like to be in trouble with her parents, so she hardly ever broke that curfew. She was tall and big-boned, confident and outgoing, a good student with many friends. She never had many boyfriends, but never seemed to want one either. She was happy with who she was and where she was. When Sarah was 16, she attended school at Tarpon Springs. It had a veterinary medicine program, and it looked like her future was all planned out. Sarah was a straight-A student who took the bus every morning for the hour-long commute to school. She had some teen crushes on celebrities or sports stars, but was still quite naive when it came to dating.
We'll take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. Now that Thanksgiving is over, the festive season is really gearing up. Decorations are going up everywhere, Christmas music is playing in the shops, and I always intend to bring a couple of seasonal decorations into my home, but never quite get around to it. And this year is no different. If you're anything like me, you've left everything to last minute, again. At least with Books.com, I have one less thing to worry about. Not only can I order a wreath or table decoration, but I can also give someone the joy of receiving a beautiful bunch of flowers or choose a holiday gift set, including candles or candy. If you haven't guessed it already, Books is short for bouquets. Books flowers are sustainably grown and cut fresh from eco-friendly farms. Because the flowers are sourced directly, they stay fresher longer. Check out the website to see their selection of holiday wreaths, fresh flowers, and plants, starting from as little as $39. They even offer flower subscriptions. Now that's handy for someone who's not all that good at remembering birthdays and anniversaries. With nationwide next or same-day delivery service throughout the U.S., Books have got you covered. For a limited time, hurry on over to catch some awesome Cyber Monday deals as well. Go to Books.com/evidence and use code EVIDENCE to get 25% off your order. That's BOUQS.com/evidence. Now, back to today's episode.
To most girls, Josh Camacho was very sexy. His curly dark shoulder-length hair, his smoldering mouth, and his sculpted upper body. He knew girls liked him, and he had a confident way about him. Josh's dad came from New York, and his mom from the Dominican Republic, where Josh and his siblings were born. He had a large family with 6 brothers and a sister. He spent a lot of time with his older brother Jay, and the pair soon racked up a reputation as players. Josh wanted to be just like Jay. Their male friends were amused by the fact that they could manage so many girls without ever getting caught. Josh had a girlfriend, Erin Slothower. They had been together since 1999. In elementary school, he wrote her a note saying, "Do you like me?" And she replied with a note, "Yes." It was a sweet, innocent romance that evolved and turned sexual when they hit their teens. By the time Josh was about to start his senior year in high school, he had fathered a child with Erin. They broke up when she was pregnant because she was sick of Josh cheating on her. But because of their child, they continued to share a strong bond. Josh simply referred to her as his baby mama. He did not take on any parenting responsibilities. Although he didn't pay his son a child support, Erin allowed him to see his son as often as he wanted to. When Sarah Ludemann was done with the 10th grade, she spent most of the summer with her friends, going to the movies and hanging out at Chick-fil-A. One day she saw the handsome Josh come out of the kitchen. He noticed her and winked at her. For Sarah, it was love at first sight. She quickly fell in love with Josh, who flirted with her whenever they saw each other. Her parents were surprised when she announced to them that she no longer wished to go to Tarpon Springs and that she wanted to transfer to Pinellas Park High. They tried to persuade her to reconsider, but Sarah had made her mind up. She did not want to follow her lifelong dream of becoming a veterinarian. All she wanted was to be at the same school as Josh. They were not in a relationship yet, and she did not tell her parents that he was the reason she wanted to change schools. When the new school year started, Josh noticed Sarah at Pinellas Park High, but ignored her. But outside of school, as soon as they were alone, he could not stay away from her. Josh was Sarah's first kiss, her first boyfriend, and she was happy with whatever Josh said or did. It didn't take him long to realize the power he had over her and soon became very controlling. Sarah's friends were concerned that she always obliged his every whim. For instance, he would insist she wore trousers, so other boys could not see her legs. She went out and bought herself extra trousers, as she never used to wear them before. She was used to wearing shorts or skirts, as she loved going to the beach. She lost 30 pounds in a short amount of time, all to look better for Josh. Her grades began slipping, and her whole universe revolved around him. She spent all of her time outside of school with Josh and saw him as the bad boy. On her phone, she had photos of Josh holding a handgun and another one of him smoking pot. Sarah even made video clips with looping rap music tracks over photos of Josh posing like a gangster, arrogantly showing off the back tattoo of his last name Camacho written in Old English. After graduation, Josh did not go to college or have a steady job. He simply lounged around playing video games and smoking weed. That is when he wasn't seeing Sarah or Aaron or some other random girl who he would charm into sleeping with him. Needless to say, Sarah's dad, Charlie Ludemann, did not like Josh. He even referred to him as the rat. He could see his daughter was changing, but there wasn't much he could do about it. He warned her, saying that Josh was bad news, but that only drove her further into his arms. Her mom, Gay, said this about Josh. There was always something about him that kept you thinking, was he good? Was he bad? Charlie and Gay knew they had to accept Josh, or they would lose their daughter. Charlie invited him along to Tampa Bay Rays games, and Gay tried her best to make him feel welcome in their home. But Josh didn't quite go out of his way to make any sort of effort with them. Sarah's parents hoped that the relationship would run its course and that their daughter would come to her senses eventually. And cracks were starting to show in their relationship. They broke up a couple of times, or rather, Josh broke it off a couple of times. But because he was her first boyfriend, Sarah was completely consumed by her love for him and refused to let him go. She didn't want to believe stories about him cheating on her and always felt that their relationship was special enough to fight for. In the first months of Sarah and Josh's relationship, Pinellas Park police were called 6 times to intervene in public confrontations. Once, Sarah and Josh even fought while shouting at each other across a busy intersection. Another time, both of them had a heated verbal confrontation with Josh's baby mama at a Cineplex. She was 8 months pregnant at the time. Josh had lied to her about where he was and she lost it. On a different occasion, they bumped into each other in a parking lot and another fight ensued. In July 2008, Sarah and Aaron were actually together. They realized that Josh was sleeping with both of them, and in Sarah's parents' minivan, followed Josh around town to catch him in the act of sleeping with someone else. Aaron and Josh's baby was in a baby seat in the back. Josh noticed the 2 girls and pulled over. He approached them and went to the driver's side. Sarah's window was rolled down. Aaron jumped out of the car to confront Josh, and as she made her way around the vehicle, Josh punched Sarah in the face. Charlie and Gay Ludemann were furious and wanted to press charges, but Sarah convinced them not to. They respected Sarah's wishes, but Gay did not follow up with police. They respected Sarah's wishes, but Gay did follow up with police and asked what they could do to keep Josh away from Sarah. But Sarah struggled to stay away from Josh. And then there was Rachel Wade. Josh knew her since elementary school, and her ex-boyfriend was friends with Jay Camacho, so they were acquaintances. In the summer of 2008, they bumped into each other at a party and sparks flew. Rachel made a point of popping around at Chick-fil-A every so often to see Josh, and they began a fun but volatile relationship. Josh managed to juggle his 2 relationships pretty well. Sarah had an 11 p.m. curfew, and Rachel didn't get off work at Applebee's before then. He would spend the evening with Sarah, the good girl, and end the night with bad girl Rachel. It was the perfect situation for someone like him. Rachel's friends felt she could have anyone she wanted. She was fun and pretty and independent. They couldn't understand her obsession with Josh. It was like she was under a spell. Josh often stayed over at her apartment during their on-again, off-again relationship. Rachel even saw his dark side and told friends that he threatened her with a gun when she wanted to break up with him. 2 months into their relationship, Rachel became aware of the fact that Josh was still involved with Sarah. Rachel knew about Sarah, but Josh had told her that they had broken up. This was not true. Rachel was under the impression that she was getting back together with Josh, and was mortified to hear that he was still with Sarah. She saw pictures of them together on a beach on Sarah's MySpace account and exploded with rage. Both Sarah and Rachel's friends encouraged them to move on from Josh, as he was clearly a player who was stringing them both along. But both girls were headstrong and in love. Rachel was furious and left Josh, being quite vocal about her reasons for breaking up with him on her MySpace page. She mentioned that she could do so much better. Then Sarah typed a comment, stating that Josh was in fact the one who had found someone better. Rachel got Sarah's phone number off of Josh's phone and left insulting voice messages, attacking Sarah's appearance and the fact that she still had a curfew. Sarah refused to be victimized by Rachel and stood up for herself. The two teenagers began a bitter feud. They posted derogatory comments on each other's MySpace accounts, sent each other insulting text messages and voicemails. It escalated as the months went on. Reportedly, Josh fueled these fires by telling each of them, "If you love me, you'll fight for me." Sarah would show up at the Applebee's where Rachel worked as a waitress, and together with her friends, would taunt Rachel. One night, Sarah saw Rachel at work, walked up to her, and knocked a tray out of her hands. She also complained to Rachel's manager, claiming that Rachel had spat in her food, which Rachel had done. Sarah showed up one Thursday night for karaoke and found Rachel was working. She changed the lyrics of her karaoke song, clearly directed at Rachel. In a voice message to Sarah, sent on the 29th of August 2008, an angry Rachel can be heard saying, "I'm guaranteeing you I'm going to murder you. You are a fucking fat bitch and I'm going to fucking kill you, I swear on my life." To make matters worse, Josh began spending more time with Rachel, moving in with her and sponging off of her. All the while, he was still seeing Sarah on the side. But instead of seeing Josh for the player he was, the girls just turned their anger towards each other. How their feud came onto police radar was when Sarah and some friends shot silly string at Rachel in a parking lot of a Taco Bell as Rachel was heading to her car. Rachel claimed that Sarah drove past her apartment and shouted, "Come on, fight me!" Sarah, in turn, told police that Rachel called her 20 times in the space of 2 hours, threatening her. But no one was physically harmed, and there was nothing police could do but try to convince the girls to put their differences behind them. Both girls' parents were unaware of exactly how bad things had become. Their friends knew that things were not looking good and tried to convince both of them separately to break up with Josh. It became public knowledge. Everyone knew about the girls' hatred towards each other. The more other teenage friends stoked the fires, the harder it became to back down. This was a big drama, an emotional chess game that played out publicly on MySpace for the most part. Rachel had a history of stirring fights between girls. She had a sharp tongue and was quick to threaten potential rivals on the phone. But most of her peers did not take her threats seriously. They felt that she was all bark and no bite because she never actually fought anyone. So when the feud with Sarah began, nobody was too concerned. They just thought Rachel had found a new target for her unrelenting rage. It all came to a head on April 14th, 2009. Josh had promised both Sarah and Rachel that he would see them that night. When Sarah arrived home from school, she immediately went to the computer and logged into MySpace. Things had been rocky between her and Josh, and she was very emotional. Like a moth to a flame, she went to Rachel's page and read her mood update. It said, "Lovin' my boo." Sarah immediately texted Josh. She sent a string of 3 messages saying, "Whatever, Josh. You get so mad at me for everything, but you don't give a shit when she pulls something up or says something. You always believe her. It's like no matter what I do, she's always that much better. All we fight about is her, or something that has to do with her, and it sucks. I hate fighting with you. I love you so much, but this shit hurts." 5 hours passed, with no response from Josh. Sarah sent another text. You say you love me. You don't even have the decency to text me back. Almost 2 hours later, Josh finally replied, only saying, bring the movies. That was enough for Sarah. She borrowed her mother's minivan and left to meet Josh at his sister Janet's place to watch movies. But before she left, she made a point of updating her mood on MySpace. She said, I love you, baby. Rachel had the evening off work and was home alone, waiting for Josh. But he never showed. She texted him, asking where he was, and he said that he had to babysit his sister's child. As it was turning dark, Rachel decided to take her dog for a walk. She later told police that a car drove past, honking its horn. She heard Sarah's voice shouting, Stay away from my man. A neighbor also corroborated that someone was outside Rachel's apartment, shouting similar statements earlier that evening. This unnerved Rachel, so she called another ex-boyfriend, Javier Laboy. He told her to come over to his house because no one would have thought of looking for her there. On her way out, Rachel turned back and fetched a steak knife from the kitchen and stuffed it into her purse. Later, she said that she was scared and worried that Sarah and her friends would attack her. She only took the knife to scare them off. Instead of heading straight to Javier's, Rachel drove past at Josh's sister's house. She saw Sarah's mother's minivan in the driveway and knew why he blew her off. Josh and Sarah were inside playing video games. Rachel sent a text. Now I know why you're not talking to me, because you got her. With Sarah sitting next to him, Josh made sure she knew he was texting Rachel. That's right, I don't like you no more. Why are you down the street? Go home. Rachel refused to leave and sent another text saying, No, I'll wait for her to go home. Rachel left eventually and arrived at Javier's house sometime between 11 p.m. and midnight. They hung out with another friend, Dustin Grimes. Rachel told them about the knife in her bag. The friends later recalled that Rachel said she was going to kill Sarah. But Rachel denied ever saying this. She said she told them she brought the knife for self-protection and that Javier and Dustin promised her that she was safe with them and wouldn't need it. Just before midnight, Sarah agreed to give Josh's sister a ride to McDonald's on her way home. It was past her curfew and her dad was getting antsy, sending angry texts, telling her to come home. On their way to McDonald's, Sarah received a phone call from Rachel and put the call on speaker. Janet Camacho and her friend Jillica Smith were in the car and heard Rachel's rant. Rachel reportedly threatened Sarah, telling her that she was going to stab her and her Mexican boyfriend. As they drove, they came across one of Sarah's friends named Ashley Lovelady at a street intersection. Ashley told them that she had just seen Rachel around the corner on 52nd Street at Javier's house. Sarah clicked into action and decided to go there to confront Rachel and shut her up once and for all. When Sarah arrived at Javier's house, Rachel, Javier, and Dustin Grimes were outside. Rachel was sitting on the hood of her car, a red Saturn, smoking a cigarette. According to Rachel, Sarah nearly ran her over as she pulled up and brought her car to a screeching halt, 5 feet from the hood of Rachel's car. Sarah then got out of the car, and Rachel later recounted with fists flailing. Rachel pulled the knife and made sure that Sarah saw it, but Sarah did not back down, adamant to get to Rachel. She pulled at Rachel's hair, pushing her head down, with Rachel's arms waving as she tried hitting her. Then, the balance of the fight turned, and Rachel obtained the upper hand. She launched her attack on Sarah. First, she cut her on her shoulder, then stabbed her twice in the chest, a wound that punctured Sarah's heart. Other witnesses say that Sarah only just got out of her car and that Rachel attacked her before she even had a chance to defend herself. But one thing witnesses did agree on was that the fight flared up rapidly and ended very quickly. As Rachel ran away, she threw the knife onto a neighbor's roof, saying, "I'm done." Javier Laboy remembered that Rachel had a blank look on her face. He said, "It didn't look like she was there with us." Janet Camacho's friend Jillica Smith was the first person at the scene who called 911. She screamed in shock, "Rachel just stabbed her." As Sarah was dying, she shouted for Janet to get back in the car, to think of her children and protect herself. Sarah crawled back to her mom's minivan to get to her phone and called Josh to tell him what had happened. Her last words to him were, "It hurts." Then she lost consciousness. When Josh was told what had happened, he ran to Sarah's house to tell her parents about the attack, and the three of them rushed to the scene. Charlie Ludemann saw Rachel sitting on a bench on Javier's front porch, smoking a cigarette, and marched up to her. He later recalled, "I said, 'Rachel, why? You stupid bitch, why couldn't you fight with your hands?' And Sarah's laying there in a puddle of blood." Rachel had no words. Sarah passed away that night and was pronounced dead at the hospital at 2:29 a.m. She died due to heart puncture. Her parents went to the hospital where doctors tried their best to revive her. Josh was there too, but he refused to go in and see her one last time. His reason was that he didn't want to see her like that. To which Charlie Ludemann said, "You're the reason she's like that." The Ludemanns blamed Josh for dragging Sarah into this toxic love triangle. She was not the kind of girl who ever went looking for trouble before she knew Josh, and because of him, they lost their only child forever. Police were dealing with a homicide case and set out to question all the witnesses at the scene of a fight, including Rachel. When police arrived, she was still sitting on a bench on the front porch of Javier's home. She was unaware of the fact that Sarah was no longer alive. Officers took her to Pinellas Park Police Station, where they asked her to explain what had happened to cause the fight. Rachel told them her version of events, leading up to the confrontation with Sarah, all the while not knowing that she had killed her. When interrogators told her that Sarah had died and that she was being charged with second-degree murder, Rachel cried, "Oh my God," and burst out into tears of disbelief and horror. Bail was set at $500,000. She stayed in remand in the Pinellas County Jail until her trial was over. According to Captain Sandfield Forsyth, he came to the understanding that it was more than a love triangle. It was a love hexagon, as he called it. He was quoted saying, "There's so many dynamics, so many people involved. The one center of gravity seems to be Joshua Camacho." Sarah's funeral was held a month before her prom. Josh was asked not to attend the funeral. Rachel Wade's trial began on the 20th of July, 2010, and was televised on True TV's show In Session. Although she had just turned 18 at the time of the crime, Rachel was tried as an adult. Many Pinellas Park teenagers attended the trial, friends of Sarah's, as well as Rachel's friends. Prosecution's job was to prove that Sarah's death was a case of premeditated murder. The history between the two young women and their arguments over Josh Camacho were laid out for the jury to consider. Defense argued that under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, the murder was a case of self-defense. Not long before Rachel's trial in 2010, Florida's self-defense law had changed to Stand Your Ground, and this means that if you're under attack, you reserve the right to defend yourself and answer with force. If you believe that your life is under threat, you can use deadly force. However, Rachel brought a knife to a fistfight, so this wasn't quite Stand Your Ground. Javier testified that on the night of the murder, Rachel and Sarah were fighting when the stabbing occurred, although he did not see the entire incident. Rachel said that Sarah and two friends attacked her. She was hit on the head 3 times. Only then did she stab Sarah in an attempt to protect herself. Stabbing blindly, she did not mean to kill her. It was only when one of Sarah's friends told her that she realized what she had done. Josh's sister Janet, who reportedly attacked Rachel along with Sarah, as well as Dustin Grimes, testified that it was Rachel who walked over to Sarah and attacked her. Josh testified, and under oath, he admitted that he was not serious about Rachel or Sarah. He saw them as simply friends with benefits and did not have exclusive relationships with either of them. The county coroner took the stand and said that it would have taken severe force to penetrate Sarah's heart with the type of knife that Rachel used, and concluded that it was done intentionally. The prosecutor also pointed out that the blade of the knife was bent, an indication that the attack was fierce and violent. In the end, the most damning evidence against Rachel was her own voice. Voicemail saved by Sarah on the night of the murder sealed her fate. "I'm going to find you and I'm going to beat your ass. He can get anything he wants from me. You still got your mommy and daddy's curfew, bitch. Why do you run your fucking mouth and why are you that pathetic? So keep talking shit, Sarah. I'm gonna fucking teach you. I'm telling you now. And even more damning was Rachel's reaction after seeing a photo of Sarah and Josh in New York on Sarah's MySpace page. This was 8 months before Sarah's murder. Please tell me, Sarah, why you would be such a dumbass cunt and put a fucking brand new picture of you and Josh at the beach on your MySpace? I'm gonna fucking murder you. I'm gonna play your ass out too, watch. You're a fucking fat bitch and I'm gonna fucking kill you. There was no coming back from that. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours only and returned with a guilty verdict. Rachel Wade was convicted of murder in the 2nd degree. When the verdict was read, Rachel collapsed in tearful agony. She apologized to Sarah's parents, stating that she never meant to cause her physical harm. But Wade Ludemann didn't buy Rachel's remorseful apology. She asked the judge for a life sentence. With her, she had framed photographs of Sarah. She showed them to the court and said, "This is my daughter. She lays in a cemetery. I go visit her there. Rachel Wade's parents can come and see her." On Friday, September 3rd, 2010, 20-year-old Rachel Wade was sentenced to 27 years in prison. The judge said that he believed Rachel intended to kill Sarah. His statement? This murder was no accident. It took a lot of force to plunge that knife through skin, through fat and bone, through someone's heart. Rachel maintained that it was self-defense and appealed her conviction. She claimed that she was not the only one who left threatening voice messages. The difference was that Sarah saved hers, whereas Rachel deleted the ones sent to her. Rachel lost her appeal. The case became a cautionary tale of how things can escalate with modern communications technology. Rachel's defense attorney, Jay Herbert, encouraged Rachel to teach young people about the dangers of social media. In a statement to CNN, Herbert said, "When you start looking at the tragic nature of this social networking, the instant messaging, the ability to hide behind the screen and make statements and create situations, it just festered until it bubbled up and exploded into a situation. Until two good girls, their worlds collided. And that's the lesson for parents. Pay close attention to your children. Watch how they talk and who they talk to. Watch their social networking outlets. Because it's an explosive situation where you don't have to be accountable, when you can break up with somebody or ask somebody to prom via text." If it weren't for cell phones or the internet, then Rachel and Sarah would not have been able to perpetuate their fights. Hiding behind a screen made both of them more confident, perhaps even meaner than they would have been face to face. In the years following Rachel's trial, on his parents' insistence, Josh moved to live with relatives in New York. Many people felt that he, being at the center of the whole tragedy, had to be held responsible in some way. But police had no grounds for charging him. In the eyes of the law, he had done nothing wrong. Unfortunately, you can't charge somebody with being a player. Charlie and Wade Ludemann filed a wrongful death suit against Josh Camacho for $15,000. This was to cover funeral costs, medical bills, and compensate them in some way for their loss. Nothing, of course, would ever bring Sarah back. Rachel is currently serving her sentence in the Lowell Correctional Institution. In an interview with Candace DeLong in the crime and investigation series Facing Evil, Rachel said, "I wish that we could have sat down and talked and figured out that we were worth more and just walked away from him or confronted him with the situation before we confronted each other. And I wish that, both of us could have been smart enough just to walk away and to realize we deserve better." Rachel says that she often speaks to Sarah's spirit and begs her for forgiveness. She hopes to marry Javier Laboy when she is released from prison. This story is a tragic one with 2 young lives lost. Sarah's parents will never see their daughter again, and Rachel will spend most of her young life behind bars. She'll be released in 2035 at the age of 45. And for what?
We'd like to thank today's sponsors, the Books Company. Remember, to get 25% off your order, go to books.com/evidence and use code EVIDENCE at checkout.
If you'd like to read more about this case, have a look at the resources used for this episode in the show notes. Also visit and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Evidence Locker Podcast to see more about today's case. If you like our podcast, Please subscribe in Apple Podcast or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts. We would also appreciate if you could review the episodes, as it gives us some street cred in the world of podcasting. This was the Evidence Locker. Thank you for listening.